So here I am taking a midwinter break to Phuket, Thailand. I'm here at the end of Patong Beach in this now creek. This place used to be more like a river a few hundred years ago with heavy flow in each direction. It's still a working fishing village as it was back then also. Back in 1675, this place was the site of a very curious naval battle, something that's unique to world history. There's more to Thailand, and there's much more to a place like Phuket than tourism. There's a lot of history and rather a lot of mystery.
Phuket has had many names. The first Europeans to map the island were the Portuguese, and they called the place Junk Ceylon. In 1675, the Dutch were running blockades across the place, restricting trade, effectively imposing their control on a bunch of people that didn't really want them about. An English merchant ship attempting to trade privately came into Patong Bay. Seeking to hide from the blockade, the vessel entered the mouth of a creek. The ship was able to go far enough up that it could hide and unload. The Dutch, however, sent men ashore to seize the merchant ship, declaring that that vessel now belonged to them. A fight broke out, and a Dutch blunderbuss was fired into the crowd, killing at least 2 people. The Dutch then decided they had the upper hand, and they sent their gunship up the creek to take away the merchant ship. This was a mistake. When it went up the creek, the locals re-emerged from the jungle, attacking. The Dutch tried to retreat, but down towards the mouth of the creek, the locals cut down 24 of the greatest trees they could find, pushing them into the water. This prevented the ship from ever leaving. The locals assaulted and overwhelmed the Dutch forces and smashed their ship to pieces. Some estimate that as many as 1.5 million tourists visit Phuket per month. It's hooked up to the rest of the world through the international airport. Phuket is the biggest island in Thailand. Even though it is an island, it's so well connected that it is in no way remote.
So we're here at Saracen Bridge. It's actually 3 bridges. But for the longest time there was 0 bridges, and actually didn't really need one.
In 1784, Thomas Forrest, a Scottish sea captain, came to Phuket, and he noted that the island was actually still joined to the mainland by a narrow isthmus of sand, and it could easily be crossed at low tide, on foot or by an elephant. For a long time there was an irregular ferry that made the crossing. Then in 1951, the Saracen Bridge was built. Since 2011, the bridge has been altered with a pavilion, making it for pedestrians only. The traffic instead runs on 2 newer bridges, also known generally as Saracen Bridge. Just south of the airport, where the only thing allowed to fly are planes, are the remains of the Phuket Peninsula Sea Spa and Resort. Abandoned during the final stages of construction in 2014, after a fire broke out. The owners could not cover the additional costs and building stopped.
So this place is pretty epic, but it's also pretty dangerous. You can feel everything dissolving into the tropical climate. You can see in parts where it was basically finished, but I think at this point, if anybody was to do anything with it, they'd have to knock it all down and try and rebuild it. It's hard to imagine it being structurally sound, even sections of it. There's so much rust. You've got the jungle coming in that side, and you've got the ocean coming in that way. And together, they're destroying what's left of this thing. All buildings in the tropics fall apart really quickly, especially ones that were never finished and sealed. It's not until a building is completed and it's all sealed up with windows and doors that it can be allowed to survive for the centuries. I think the most interesting thing that could be done with this spot is nothing, if it was just left. If it was still here in another century, it will have fallen down even more. And in that way, it will become even more fascinating.
Phuket is a jungle infringed with attempts at civilization. There are still elephants about, However, they're used mostly as beasts of burden. In the 18th century, they were exported from Phuket to India to fight in battle. The Siamese army also used them, carrying troops, goods and cannons. For the longest time, the wild tigers roamed the hills and the valleys and the beaches. The last recorded wild tiger to be shot dead was in 1974. The most successful countries in the world, with the specific exception of Singapore, all lay outside the tropics. Thailand is a tropical country, the sun is more direct in Phuket, the rain is harder, the humidity relentless. So we're here in front of this busted water pipe. It's an example of ad hoc infrastructure in Phuket that has become broken. It's not been put down super officially, you can tell it's just plastic piping down each side of the road. People trying to get water to their homes, water that they need. And of course it gets broken pretty easily because it's not very well made. Now this pipe could have been busted for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, I can't tell. Eventually someone might come along and fix it. Wrap some more duct tape around it. It's tough living in the tropics.
This is one of the nicest parts of the island. It's the nicest place in the cultivated sense. There's high walls, lots of security. The traffic hardly makes a sound. No one beeps their horns. There's speed bumps to slow everything down. There's a whole bunch of golf courses and lakes. Before it was like this, before it was nice, it was horrible. And the reason it was horrible because it was left over from a period of industry. That industry began with a chain reaction. It was kicked off by a guy from Tasmania, of all places.
Captain Teddy Miles was born in Van Diemen's Land in 1849, following an eventful career as a ship's master, a salvager, and as the Minister for Mines and Railways in the Australian state of Tasmania. Arriving in Phuket in his late 50s, surveying the tin deposits in the shallow of Phuket's east coast, observing the manual labour of workers toiling in the muddy waters. In New Zealand's inland goldfields, a new type of giant floating steam-driven bucket dredger was being used. Miles imagined that the same machine could be used offshore in Thailand to collect tin, specifically in the shallow bays of Tongkar Harbour, where the seabed was known to be full of alluvial tin washed down from the hills above. In 1906, Miles registered the Tongkar Harbour Tin Dredging Company in Hobart, Tasmania. He signed an agreement with the King of Thailand. The dredge itself came in bits from Scotland, where it was assembled in Penang. Unable to ensure the voyage, he bought a small steamer, took the task upon himself. He was on the steamer with one of his sons, his other son on the dredge, plus the future dredge master. It took 4 days to travel from Penang to Phuket, and within 1 hour of landing, a huge storm arrived, one that could very well have sunk them. Dredging had never been done at sea before. With a lot of perseverance and help from Chinese miners who understood how to wash tin, they got the machine going. The very first 6 pickles of tin were dredged from the water on the 6th of January 1908. After the Second World War, as the richest deposits were consumed, the great dredgers gradually disappeared. Yet the last dredger was not taken out of operation until 2001. The Tongkar Harbour Company is still listed on the Malaysian and Bangkok stock exchanges. A monument to the Tasmanian Captain Miles's endeavours was erected in 1969. One could suspect that most people don't even know what it is, easily dismissed as a piece of weird corporate art. In 1984, investors acquired 222 hectares of land on the site of an abandoned mine at Bang Tao Bay. Heavily polluted with acid-laden soil, an extensive clean-up was done, planting more than 7,000 trees. Today, the area looks neither like a mine or the jungle that it was before all of that. Praya Wichet Songkram. The property appears to have been built in the 1870s and fortified by the owner, who was connected to the tin mining industry. His son inherited the business and its interests, but somehow had problems, and the government confiscated all of his holdings a few decades later. After he was gone, the whole place fell into ruin. The exact details are gone.
If you were to be like me, you might come here and you might find yourself all alone within the echoes of time and space. This ruin looks a bit older than what it is because of the climate. The tropics just destroys everything. You could have a bad storm front come through, knock a place about, and if it wasn't repaired really quickly, the whole thing could be destroyed within a few months, certainly to the point where it's never going to get repaired. So this ruin isn't that old. It's definitely old enough to be interesting though. There was another building, and that ruin, if it still exists, is extremely interesting. It was a giant fort, a huge fort, massive place of function. The thing is, we don't know where it is. We don't know that much about it. There are accounts of it, descriptions of it, but no one has been able to work out where exactly it was. Now, it might be one of these permanent mysteries. There are mysteries that can be solved, even though they won't be. So things that theoretically there should be enough clues out there, or there are enough clues out there that you could put things together if you took the time and did all the research. But then there are other sorts of mysteries in history, things that are completely lost. And the location of the great Phuket fort might be one of those. It's too far gone. It may have been reclaimed by the jungle, it may be beneath the roads or underneath new buildings. No one knows. And there aren't enough clues. So I guess in that sense, it's maybe even more interesting because you just have this impossibility of knowing exactly where it even was.
No one knows when the fort was built or even what it looked like. It may have been several different buildings. One account said that it was 400 metres by 400 metres square, made from rammed earth and wooden turrets. At one stage, it held 2,000 people and 80 cannons. It seems to have been mostly destroyed in the Burmese siege of 1811. The same fort was earlier defended by the two heroines, Chan and Mook. It's said that the twin sisters helped defend the island from Burmese invaders in 1786. They did this in part by convincing all the women available to dress up as male soldiers, so that they would, from a distance, appear to make the army look twice its actual size. The monument itself was built in 1967. Japan invaded Thailand on the 8th of December 1941. Fierce fighting occurred, but only lasted about 5 hours, ending in a ceasefire. Thailand could not defeat the invading Japanese forces. And when Japan offered to support Thailand's claims to territories that had been ceded to the colonial powers of Britain and France, they pragmatically agreed to align with the Axis. For Phuket's part, it all seemed to conclude on Pa Phra Beach.
I'm the only person on this beach right now. Towards the end of World War II, there was a bunch of people, a bunch of Japanese people that had been fighting, and they'd been stuck here on Phuket. The Allied forces were coming in. The Japanese had been catching L's all over the Pacific and in Asia, and they were just about to catch another one right here. The Allied forces were coming in, they had them cornered. The Japanese couldn't do anything but surrender. Before they surrendered though, they did what you're meant to do if you get captured. Just before you get caught, you have to get rid of all your weapons and your machinery, anything, maybe it's just information, anything that can be used by the opposing side against you later on. So they got all their weapons and things like cars, trucks, engines. It's hard to say, we don't really know. And they chucked them there. They threw them out into the water, or they drove them into the water. So out there should be relics, remnants from the war, but it's a mystery because I don't think anybody's actually gone and had a look. Maybe it's all been taken by rust and the fish underneath the lapping waves.
Construction of the Big Buddha began in 2005. Paid for with donations, construction is ongoing. The religious monument is also a tourist attraction. The robes of the Buddhist monks are variations of ancient Greek attire. Beginning around 330 BC, in the wake of Alexander the Great, Greek power and influence spread into Asia through trade routes. Greco-Buddhist art saw the Buddha begin to be depicted in artwork dressed in Greek style. The followers of the religion also came to dress like that too. By the time the costumes were being worn in Thailand, the colour of the robes had changed from whites to dark red, orange and yellow.
So there's all these coconut husks here, some remnants of some sort of pavilion. I really don't know anything about this place. It's just one of many just around Patong, just specifically Patong. Across the whole island though, there are ruins, they're just everywhere. And they're probably not that old. You go to a place like Rome or ancient Egypt, any one of these places that's famous for ruins, and people wonder how did they come to be in a state of disrepair. Very similar reasons to the why and the how and the when of those that are occurring now in a place like Thailand. Everything's falling apart and there's nothing really you can do about it.
(2004) Boxing Day tsunami. No one in Phuket knew what was coming. The waterline sucked away. Some people went down to it to look closer. The horizon churned white. The waves would meet the west coast of the island beginning at around 9:30 a.m. and continue in increasing height for about 90 minutes. 8,212 people were confirmed killed in Thailand and a further 2,817 remain missing, presumed dead. It's worth noting that most people in Thailand, including in the coastal areas, do not know how to swim. Part of the attraction of Phuket is its connectivity to places nearby, places made famous in English language films. Maya Bay was the filming location of the 2000 film The Beach, directed by Danny Ball, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, based on the novel by Alex Garland. The beach itself is described in the book as being enclosed within a high rock wall of karst. In order to make this look right, the gap in the hillside was digitally filled in. Today, the place gets flooded with tourists. It's worth noting that the beach, as described in the book and the movie, isn't actually meant to be on the west coast of Thailand. Instead, it's in the Gulf of Thailand, near the islands of Koh Samui and Koh Phangan. There is not, however, any such geological karst features that match with the story in that part of the country. The 1974 spy film, The Man with the Golden Gun, was filmed in Phang Nga Bay. And now the island where one of the biggest scenes was shot is known to everybody as James Bond Island. Early local scribes wrote on cloth, bound in banana leaves. Those records were lost to the climate, and the history from that period has been erased. Bits and pieces from other places, Chinese, Indian, Arab, European, plus some archaeological remains, can be sat next to each other, but it's all rather misty. Phuket encompasses the full spectrum of Thai tourism, and for some it is a place that they might love and hate equally. But for those who are match fit, good times are obligatory.